afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. Waiting on our guests to appear. This show is brought to you by New Life Recovery Center, located at 110 St. Paul Street in downtown Baltimore. And New Life Recovery Center offers treatment on demand. Just call 240-253-3663. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Chance to get around the table, see family, friends. Here's a thought for, I know a lot of my friends, as I get older, a lot of my friends have lost loved ones, moms. Chew Smith lost his mom. Buddy Hilbert Byers, Morehouse brother. He lost someone close to him. This is their first Thanksgiving without their mom, Big Mama. I know the feeling. 39 years ago, I lost that someone special. And I'm reminded that from Thanksgiving through Valentine's Day, it's called seasonal depression. And I think it's important to remember some basic things. Don't be alone too long. Don't get too hungry. Don't get too angry. Don't get too tired. So get your rest. Make sure you eat, drink water, because it can be draining. So we have with us none other than McCormick, very patient director of New Life Recovery. How are you doing?
I'm okay, Di. I'm trying to get my stuff together here. I'm in a different space. I'm not in my office. I'm at the hotel, and I've got a new device that I try to get on to. Little technical difficulties, but I'm here.
I understand. These holidays have been challenging for some people where they have lost a loved one. Any thoughts on coping with that scenario?
Well, I was in a 12-step meeting on yesterday, down here in North Charleston, South Carolina. That's where we are, right? That's where I am right now, visiting my parents. And the group probably had this was a 9 a.m. meeting, and I support 12-step programs. By the way, whatever 12-step program that it is, and there are quite a few, but there were probably a dozen people at this particular meeting, and many of them were expressing that they didn't have an immediate family. They didn't have anyone. So they were at the meeting to garner support, to recognize where they were in their individual recoveries, which I thought and I think is very important. So to your question, I think in terms of coping with, let's say, loss or separation, right, which can be categorized as a loss. If you're separated from your family, because we often think of loss as death. Death is not always, or loss is not always categorized, loss is not always categorized as death. Sometimes separation, right, from whomever can be categorized as loss. If we are, for whatever reason, and it's not always tied to drugs and alcohol, let's just be honest. If we are separated from families, let's just say because of behavior, Donnie. I'm sure you know some examples where some people don't want to mess with people because of behavior. Ain't got nothing to do with drugs, alcohol, because of behavior, right? And they don't want to mess with them people. We talking about even family, right? That can be considered and even felt as a loss because you may yearn or long for that person to be back in your space, or you be back in that circle, whatever the case may be. Because a lot of times we always think of loss as death. It's not always death, it's separation, actually. But I think in terms of coping with it, that's a multi-tiered answer. If we're talking about death, right, let's categorize it descriptively. If we're talking about death, coping with it means actually having grieved that particular person's passing, right? And you know, Donnie, for yourself in your own situation, because you and I have talked off camera, a lot of people don't grieve, right? Or they never get a chance to grieve. Different situations call upon different things. So sometimes we're in situations where, because of what we do, because of our responsibilities, we don't get the opportunity to grieve. Then I'm talking about death, someone's passing, for whatever reason, right? The job is calling on you, right? You got to be at the job, right? You got a position or some responsibility that don't really allow you the time and the space to grieve. But what I've learned, my own experiences, Donnie, I'm sure you have yours, is you have got to grieve a person's passing, right? We're not even talking about the label of the person. We're not talking about, you know, mom, dad, whomever it is that was close to you, that's affecting you and your thinking and your feeling, right? Got to have time to grieve. That's the first thing in terms of coping. Secondly, I think it's necessary to share what it is you're going through with somebody, right? Because they say there's I'm sure you've heard this, Donnie, there's an adage that I believe in that says pain shared is pain lessened. That's why people go to therapy. People go to therapy to talk to somebody, a stranger. You just had to be paying that person to listen to your situation, your issues. And then when you leave there, and I say this experientially, let me keep it personal. When I left there, I felt lighter. Now, here's the thing. I think I had maybe 12 or 13 sessions, Donnie. And in none of those sessions did the individual I was the therapist, did she ever change the issue or the situation that I was telling her about? She never changed it. When I left the office, nothing had changed outwardly. The situation was still upon me, while I was still going through. But what it was, I had opportunity to express it to somebody. So I think, secondly, in terms of coping, I think sharing with someone you trust, a pastor, a therapist, somebody who can hold your issue with them, right? And trust is important. You don't just go tell your pain to anybody, because sometimes, I'm sure you know, brother, because you're a cultured and worldly man. Sometimes people can weaponize your pain, right? Use it against you, if not now, later, right? And we all know. I'm sure we all know people like that. So in terms of coping, I think grieving is very important. And you know what? Here's the thing. I think that you can even grieve the separation of a relationship, Don. You don't have to always grieve death. I'll give you an example. I've been divorced a few times. And without getting into the wrong or right of it, whose fault, that's not even important. In those situations, personally, I grieved the separation of those women, right? For whatever reason. That might sound crazy, but if you spend time with somebody, and you and I talk about this in terms of you, and I certainly wouldn't talk about that online, on camera. We get attached to people, man. We get emotional. We lend ourselves to them and learning about them learning about us. We get attached, right? Emotionally. So when it's cut off, for whatever reason, we ain't talking about wrong and right here. We're talking about just something that happens. You grieve that loss. Now, that ain't no death. That's a loss. It's a separation, right? And in order for us to really go on and go forward, I'm dealing with this right now, Don. You have to grieve the separation of that relationship in order for you to be present in whatever comes next. Because a lot of times, you know this, bro, we grown men. We carry baggage into the next relationship. If we carry baggage into the next relationship, it's really doomed from the start.
Sorry, something went wrong. Please try again.
I'm sorry. I got this against my my iMac. when we carry back into the next relationship, brother, that next relationship is doomed from the start. We ain't give it a chance because we carrying the old into the new. So that's, grieving is very important. I think that's probably more important than sharing pain with somebody. But they certainly are sister and brother in terms of coping. And in this season, to me, this season recognizes gratitude and where we are versus where we've been. I myself am looking at. So listen, I'm gonna share this with you. I didn't really plan to come down to South Carolina for Thanksgiving. There's a lot of stuff going on in Baltimore that I need to have my hand on. But let me tell you what happened, Donnie. About a month ago, I was talking to my mother. My mother is, I'm 60. She's 75. She said, she had me when she was 15, her and my dad. She said to me, it would be really nice if I could have all my children at my house for Thanksgiving. Now, my brother lives in Texas, in Dallas. My sister's a little easier. She lives 45 minutes away from my mother in South Carolina. But let me tell you what immediately hit me when she said that, when I was thinking, that might not be a good time to come to South Carolina because it's a 9-hour drive, because I drive, I don't fly. And I drive, I'll get into that in a minute. So I drive, and it's 9 hours on 95. And I was thinking, I just got this new license, this new clinical license. I just got this new Medicaid number. I'm trying to hire some new counselors. I ain't really got time to drive down there and fight traffic. That was what I first thought. But let me tell you what happened after that, Donnie. Not long after that thought of my busyness, I remembered. Now she's still on the phone as I'm thinking this. I didn't say anything. I just was thinking, I probably won't be able to go down there. I got this to do. Da. So as she's talking, and I'm listening to this voice, I'm gonna tell you something. In 1994, I was on trial for armed robbery, and I had a. This is what we call over to jail. I had a ransom for bail. My bail was $100,000. It was my first offense, Donnie. I had never broken the law ever in life before this particular time. And that charge, check that, those charges came as a result of getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. And that'll have you out there breaking laws. So I was sitting over the jail, man, $100,000 ransom. Let me tell you what happened. My mother had never seen me in jail before. Her and dad put their house up. They had equity in their house. They put their house up, man. They put their house up to cover my $100,000 bail and got me out of jail until I went to trial. Right. So I hold on to that because that's a momentous doing. You had to go through some things in order for that to happen. Some paperwork involved, and you got to have the equity in your house. It's they told me the process after the fact, and I just like, God, wow. So when my mother, and I don't want to stay on as long because I feel my eyes getting water. When I was on the phone with her, and she said, I really would like for my children. That's what she said. My children come to see me on Thanksgiving. I went back to, and that when she said in the courthouse, I was in the front with the shackles on my feet and the handcuffs in front and the waist chain around my waist, and I had to jump on. And I remember she stood up and she said, I want to get my son out of jail. Your Honor, how much is the bail? He looked over his glasses. Judge Reddick. I'll never forget him, Donnie. He said, I just told you, man, your son's bail is $100,000. He looked at it like that. Okay. And then my dad was like, sit down, Shirley. Matter of fact, he said that. And she sat down. Because I told you, I had never been to jail before, man. So probably 2 days later, I was in the jail, and they called my name, and they said, "Bill McCormick." So that moment is emblazoned in my mind. So when she told me she wanted all her kids, so everything that I thought I had to do went on the back burner, so I could come down here and be with my mother. And so that's my gratitude for this moment. And I said we got a guest on here. I want to be considerate of time and schedule, as they say in Great Britain. How you doing, sir?
How you doing, Mr. McCormick? How's everything, sir?
All is well, man. I dare not complain, as my granddad used to say. Don, if you would be so kind.
Remarkable story you have too.
Mike Haynie, you know anything about grieving and loss in this holiday season?
Sure. First of all, good afternoon, Donnie. Thanks as usual for having me. I don't take anything lightly. As I sat around the table yesterday and I gave God thanks, as I do every day, specifically a year ago when my daughter had a stroke. Brain due to a brain aneurysm, and I had to take on my 4-year-old granddaughter, and then Thanksgiving Day, my sister went in the hospital and almost lost her life. So
wow,
3 people: my aunt, who passed away earlier this year; my sister went in the hospital a year ago yesterday; my daughter went in the hospital on November 7th. So grieving, gratitude, dealing with stuff, and then, dealing with my own stuff, but yeah, I carry a depth of gratitude on a daily basis, man, particularly when you come from where I came. You know what I'm saying?
Mr. McCormick, you were talking about grieving. What is the process?
Well, Donnie, I think that's really, I think that's situational and it's individual, very personal to whomever. I don't believe we all grieve the same way, right? But I think generally, it's a period of just processing that. Now, if we're talking about death again, because I believe, so we're talking about that. I believe for myself. Let me just use it. Let me keep it on Venn. My grieving process is just thinking on the life of that person, right? What their life meant to me, how they might have inspired me, the interactions that we've had together, just focusing on, the positive things in those moments that I might have had with that person. Because the reality is this may start to be religious. Now we don't want it to be. It's selfish of me I heard this at the pulpit, Donnie. It's selfish of me to be not disappointed, to be unhappy or I guess it is disappointment, to be unhappy or sad in someone's passing. Now, Vin, why would you say that? Because if I think about it spiritually, let me not say religiously, that person is not here to deal with the things we have to deal with here, right? They have gone on to, this is my practice, of course, this is my belief system. They've gone on to something better, right? As they say, Diane, they've gone on to glory. So why would I be upset about that? Why would I be sad about that? The sadness is in they've left me. They've gone from my life, right? So I got to get to a place where, and I'm a little better at it now, having worked on some things spiritually and grown. I'm a lot better at realizing that person is no longer in pain, and they don't have to be in the hospital on their deathbed to be in pain. Because I'm gonna tell you something. I don't know about you guys. I'm in pain right now, right? It's not physical pain, anything like that. I'm in pain because of what we've gone through as a people. We don't have a level play, just a lot of stuff like that. So that causes me great pain. I don't have the answer to it, of course. That's above my pay grade. But for someone who is no longer here, they are in a much better place. They don't have to deal with the trials and tribulations of life as we see it. They ain't gotta be worried about the election and what Trump's gonna do. So they really are in a better place. Do I think that at first? Absolutely not. Why they take my nana? Why they take pop? They're not in pain anymore. You know what I mean? So I have to get to that manner and that maturity of thinking, right? To relieve myself that, yeah, they're not here no more, but they're in a much better place. And then I become grateful for the time that God has allowed me to spend in their lives. That don't come right away, right? That comes with some growth and some understanding of things, and just understanding that death is in fact a part of life, right? Because everything that starts has some end of a sort. So,
Mike, how do you grieve a breakup?
How do I grieve a breakup? Hey, man, it's painful for me, and I'm glad that we spun from grief being associated only with death, although that's primarily what people look at, because when you take away some normalcy from me, and particularly if it's been consistent and I got used to it, it can be very painful, but grieving a breakup, I remember my 18 years old, and my little girlfriend from Western High School threw my little $90 ring in the toilet, man, because she said, hey, I can't deal with no long distance relationship. I was going to Boston to school and she was going wherever. I cried every time I heard a sad song, man. You talk about pain. You talk about pain and grief. Every day was long, man. Back then, we didn't have air conditioners in the window, so I'm going through this long, hot summer of hurt. And I didn't know what to do with hurt. I didn't know what to do with pain, other than what men are supposed to do with it, right? Quote unquote, hide it. I didn't want anybody to see me cry. And so that just became the garbage can pileup of issues in my life from that point forward. And it was at the basis of the garbage can, dealing with my grief in that manner, thinking that I had to be so-and-so. I couldn't cry, I couldn't hurt, but I was hurting like hell, man. Somebody told me years later, they said, they said it differently, hurt. Go ahead and go through that pain. Once you experience it, at least you can identify with it. Not that it won't hurt again, but at least you can identify with pain and say, I went through that before, man. I know what I did then positively.
How about you, Van? How do you grieve the loss of a relationship?
Well, these days I try to, and I need to say that because it's always an attempt. I try to recognize first that it is over, right?
Wow.
Because listen, I don't know about y'all or the first that's listening. Sometimes it'd be over, and I won't recognize that it's over, right? And in doing that, I'm causing myself pain, right? You ever been in a situation where you with somebody and the only person that don't know that the relationship is over is you, right? That causes great pain. So the first thing I need to do is I need to recognize that it is indeed over, right? And the second thing I try and do, Donnie and Haynie, is I try to not find myself at fault, right? I try not to beat myself up over whatever happened. Because, and I'm gonna speak experientially, and for myself, I've had a hand in my separations. I've had a hand in my divorces, if I were to be transparent, right? And so I've had to, in my growth, I've had to recognize that I was the catalyst in terms of my divorces, man. And actually had to go back later, not immediately, not in the moment, and apologize to those women that divorced me. That divorced me. Let me keep it a stack. So I had to do that for my own personal growth and my own personal ability to get over those relationships, because, I remember one particular divorce. I grieved over that thing years after it was finalized in court, after the decree was given. I agonized over it because I knew I had messed up, right? It was my first wife, the one who I was in active addiction over for many years, and I heard that sister really, really bad. So when I got clean years later, right, and she had got remarried, we didn't have any communication, but I'm clean now. It was years after I got clean, and I wanted to contact her so bad and tell her how sorry I was, Now, one of the things I understand these days is not everybody wants to hear your apology, right? Even in separations, right? We had to give people their time to grieve, and their times might not be our times, right? So I had to be considerate of other people's times. We're talking relationship. Another woman, a woman's time to want to have a conversation with me of that nature. I got to give her the opportunity to want it. I can't just want it for myself to get it up off of me. Got to give her, and if it never happens, I have to be okay with that. So I got to be a big boy. You know, she never want to speak to me, never want to hear me say I'm sorry. I've got to be okay with that. I don't know if everybody can, right? Some people are so demanding. I want to. I'm telling you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Everybody don't want to hear that shit, Don. Right? So now you got to be all right with that. So I wasn't always, right? Because it took her some time to even have a conversation with me. She was remarried, new job, new house. They had a business. I'm like, okay, well, you don't want to hear my sorry. So eventually we had a conversation, and I was able to tell her how I felt. This is years after I got clean. I got remarried too. And yeah, so understanding that it's over, right? And then being all right with it was my fault, right? Giving myself, taking responsibility, and then being okay with the fact it was my fault.
Can you relate, Mr. Haynie?
Oh, absolutely, man. I can relate to a lot of things he says. Matter of fact, I can relate to him even during the course of my active addiction. And, you know, my first marriage, 5 kids in an active addiction with 2 of those kids, and wanting to make amends to a lot of people. But see, common sense of what I was told took over, and it told me to make amends when possible, except when they will injure myself up. So
Right.
you know, and I
That's right.
carry that through today. You know what I'm saying? And wanting to want people to see how good I was doing at that point. Maybe it was 10-year point, 12-year points. This is my 38th year in recovery, right? 38 years, right? And you never forget the pain. Matter of fact, for me, it's important that I remember, you know. But when I look at my ex-wife, who I was in very active addiction with, I always believe that we all contribute to the situation we in. You know what I'm saying? You know, either me being there or me doing something. And there was no doubt. But I'm sitting here listening to Mr. McCormick, man, and so much aligns. So much aligns. But, you know, I learned how to forgive myself too. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I choose to do. I learned how to forgive myself, even if what I may have done disrupted your life. Because I used to always cast blame. You know, it was never my fault. But see, that's the insanity of what we take ourselves through, man. And we look at things differently now, in all matters. And guess what? I ain't using 38 years, but it doesn't mean some of my thinking isn't similar as other human beings are in terms of what I do. And I got to check myself all the time, man. All the time.
Unmute yourself there, Mr. McCormick. Tell me about this article in the Maryland Matters. I think his thing froze up on him. So how do you forgive yourself?
How do I forgive myself? Right. By, you know, first of all, you know, I acknowledge God on a daily basis. That's why I am consistent in church. Although God don't want us to keep coming back, I don't believe asking for forgiveness of the same stuff every day, every week. And that life is progress, where you're always looking to work on something, mainly yourself, right? So that's how I forgive myself, man, is acknowledge my mistakes and my faults, have a bit of humility, and I do the best I can not to repeat that stuff that I know makes me uncomfortable. And it's tough sometimes. It's tough. I know when I'm wrong.
A part of your assignment these days is covering politics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel guilty that it's so easy to throw bricks at politicians?
Well, I don't know if it's throwing bricks. I think, politics is a blood sport. I think that those that are in the game know that it's not a game of perfection. How do you measure success? And the fact that Hogan, as an example to what you're saying, had the highest approval rate of any governor, but yet during the congressional U.S. Senate campaign, there was still a large swath of people that criticized them. So me throwing bricks, it is what it is, because this is it's a democratic society, so they say, but nobody's ever happy. Everybody isn't always happy, so there's always something to say. I don't know if I call it throwing bricks or exposing your contradictions and your hypocrisy.
So, Mr. McCormick, recently you were quoted in Maryland Matters in this article on advocates plan to push legislation that would rein in random traffic stops. How did they come to interview you?
So, and I apologize for the interruption. I told you I was toiling away with these devices, man, in this space, but I'm persistent. So I work with the public defender's office right now at housing returning citizens. So I was in a meeting with them a couple of months ago, and they told me about this effort that was going on right now, where they were attempting to have legislation initiated to eliminate traffic stops that were deemed unlawful. Right? They gave me the parameters. Your tail light is out, just different things. It's a whole bunch. It's a whole long list of stuff on the books now that they can stop you for. And they asked me, they said, "Well, Mr. McCormick, do you have any experiences with the police stopping you for what you believe are unlawful traffic stops?" I said, "How much time you got?" So they asked me, this was before this particular event in Catonsville. This was 2 months ago. So I gave them an example of one of the times I've been stopped in traffic. This is within the last 5 years. Now, I've been stopped quite a bit, but I gave them some more recent stuff. So I gave them an example of one, and they were like, "Wow, would you like to be on the panel?" So I was like, "Sure, well, what do I do?" "Well, can you just give the audience, an example of a traffic stop?" So I gave an example that day, 2 months ago. So when I was on the panel last week, was it, Donnie? I gave them a different example. I've been stopped a few times, brothers. I drive high-end stuff, and my windows tinted, and I drive in the county a lot. I drive in the hood quite a bit. So I guess the officers, and they've been Caucasian, as a matter of fact, probably 13 out of 15 times they've been Caucasian. I guess they think that there's a drug deal in there. We're gonna stop and see what we can get. I just believe that. You can't shake me from that. So that's how that came to be, man. It was a really interesting experience. I'm grateful for it, and I'm waiting for them to initiate the legislative aspect of that, because Donnie, we need to go to Annapolis when they have the hearings on it to allow for witnesses. And Mr. Haynie, I don't know if you've had those experiences, brother, but we need as much support as we can, because I really would like to see that law, that the bill become a law, and have Wes Moore sign it, because we need to do something, man. And all we can do is put the laws on the books. One of the things that I expressed in the panel is the law being on the books is not enough. If we don't have punitive measures in place for when those officers, black or white, right, make those stops, if we don't have something greater than just slapping them on the hand, they'll continue to do it. It'll be business as usual. Won't nothing change, man, except we'll have a new law on the books. So that's how that happened, Donnie. That's a long answer to your short question.
Mr. Haynie, when Freddie Gray happened, the police took a knee as a result of Marilyn Mosby's charging the cops. Can we draw any correlations?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is what they're saying. They're saying that, and you know, there's some states, some jurisdictions, and I thought even in Maryland where you can't stop somebody for a broken headlight anymore. Some jurisdictions have incorporated that because we know that's the impetus for them to racially profile. Maryland came up with some compelling data like 2 or 3 years ago, which may have precipitated this this legislation coming to the forefront. But yeah, there absolutely is a correlation between cops taking a knee, not only with traffic stops, but in going into certain neighborhoods. You know what happened over the course of the past few years when, after Freddie Gray, black cops stopped policing. They say, I'm gonna do my time, and then I'm going right back up to York, Pennsylvania, and Shawnee, Pennsylvania, and wherever I came from across the line, and take my hind parts home. Y'all can have y'all raggedy city. That's essentially what they said, you know. And even some of your black cops, the same thing. You know, hey, I get it, you know, but what's the benefit if you, and you know, cops need certain tools. Like I was coming down Liberty Road into the county. I live in the city. And so the cop was hanging out between the car dealership and the Popeyes with his lights out looking for me. And I say me because if you're a black man and you've been driving for a period of time and you ain't been stopped, man, you're a lucky guy, and your number just ain't hit yet.
Right.
You know, I got stopped in D.C. on Inauguration Day in 1984, 82, whatever it was. They took me to jail because I had my driver's license. Now, how did you know I had my driver's license and there was nothing else wrong with the car I was driving? I wasn't driving fast. I was on K Street, but that's what they did. They profiled.
Absolutely.
We know that.
Wow. So any tips for people to get through the holidays without drinking and drugging?
Tips? What does that mean? I tell
Well,
you, drink,
Jerry
if you want
Cross,
to drink and you want to drug, I mean, not everybody wants to get through it like me and Mr. McCormick. Me and Mr. McCormick want to get through the holidays without drinking or drugging because we profess that that's the way our life goes. All I say, as the person I told last night that I knew was going out to visit, hey, if you go out, I know you like to have a glass of wine or a Hennessy, don't drive. The only tip I give them, take an Uber. You know what I'm saying? But because what's good for me doesn't mean it's good for you. So I don't have any tips for anybody other than me and Mr. McCormick, you know, on the corner talking about what we have professed that we don't want to do because it ain't for everybody. Everybody don't have my problem. Now you can't come
smiling,
over
Mr.
my
McCormick.
house. You can't come over my house and get drunk. And if you come over my house, there's no beer in the refrigerator. So therefore, I had nobody at my house. I guess I don't know why they didn't come over, but that's my thing, you know. But don't drive my grandkids. And I know who you are, and I know what you do. You can't have my grandkids in the car.
Let's go on a lighter note. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my daughter. If you're asking me, I'm grateful for my daughter getting in a better situation than she was a year ago. I'm grateful for the fact that my mother was happy as heck with her 4 children around her last night having dinner, just the 4 of us and my mother. And that my mother is alive because I know your story with your mom. I live for that. I live to hear that, not understanding how you feel, you know? And so I'm just grateful for the little things, man. You know what I'm saying? Just grateful for the little things. But my mom still being here, very grateful for that.
That's outstanding, Haynie. So, Donnie, you asked me what I was smiling. I was listening to Haynie express. He said something very powerful. Everybody doesn't want to live a life of being clean and sober, right? And I respect that, and I move out their way. In fact, I got some relatives whose houses, I don't know how it's gonna sound, but it's just my truth. I got some relatives whose houses I don't even want to go to during the holidays, right? So one of the things about me, where I am in my life,
my life and recovery, right, is I don't voluntarily go to places where I'm fairly certain people going to be going from 0 to 100 real quick, right? Because most of the time people don't know how to handle that external thing they put in their body, whether it's alcohol or marijuana, right? So, I got some relatives who drink strictly for the effect of it. They don't want to put the cup down until they feeling it. That's their life. I give that to them. I don't want to be in that space, because when that happens, a different side of that individual, and we joke about it, and comedians joke about it all the time, a different side of that person comes out. They become louder. They become more profane. The more saliva come out their mouth. They singing off key. They all up on you. A whole lot of stuff. I don't really. That's not love to me. That's not. I don't want that. Right. I don't know how that sounds. But I'm just telling you me. Right. The marijuana. I've gotten to the point where I know it's been legalized. We're talking about Maryland. It's legalized here medically. I can't recall if it's been. Maybe you guys can help if it's been legalized recreationally. I don't think it has recreation, but I know it has been medical, right? So it's off the chain, man. It's out. It's on the sidewalk. I see blunts in Baltimore City. I see blunt wrappings and tobacco that's been taken out of the blunt everywhere I go, right? I smell it. I could be driving down down. I was on Greenmount behind some cars a few days ago, and I smelled the marijuana as I'm driving up the street, because the cars in front of me was smoking it. It was blowing out the window, right? I was like, man, it's off the chain. It's off the chain. But I don't want to be around people who I know are smoking marijuana, because I don't want the smell, right? Because you ain't got to be
Wow.
smoking. You ain't got to be
Wow.
smoking. It's gonna be on you. That's just where I'm at in my life, man. It doesn't cause my stomach to flip or any of that. It don't make me want to go and get me a blunt or a dime. It don't do none of that. The alcohol don't make me. It's just I don't like the behavior that comes with that, right? And that might sound like I'm uppity. It's not, man. I seen it. I lived
Oh
it.
man, and I can relate, man, because like for me, and until you experience what I experienced, I can't speak for Mr. McCormick's recovery. I can only speak to the benefit of what mine has been. It's been magnificent, right? 38 years, every single day through my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, halfway through my 60s, I haven't drank a drug, anything, right? And so, and I got some sick behavior probably. If you ask some people, that guy's out of his mind, right? So why would I sit there and have a conversation with you about anything and you under the influence? So I just don't do it. So why am I sitting there? And then I don't go to places that don't make sense for me to go, right? So you want me to meet you at the 5 Mile House for what? Is that a setup for me? And so I understand why you want me to meet you there. I'm understanding why I want to go. What's wrong with you? I'm asking myself, why are you talking with them? You just saw them drink 3 rum and cokes. Why are are you crazy? So what's wrong with your behavior? You sitting there talking with someone, debating politics, Westmore, Hogan, whatever, and they're under the influence. So what are you getting here? So insanity is me having a conversation with someone under. So, it's a whole different perspective for me, right? And not that I criticize you, because you're
Right.
entitled to do that. I spent
Absolutely.
my first 13 years in recovery on the in Washington Hospital Center, doing meetings and taking the message and working. Because one thing about a recovery house, man, when you go in there, I was in there just as I'm dressed now. They let me in and they locked the doors. I had nothing physically wrong with me at all. Didn't have broken arm, broken head. So I was on a mental ward, essentially. When you look at it. And so there was something mentally wrong with me. So I'm going to get back into that same spirit now, 30 some years later, putting myself in a trick, So I just look at things differently. But I do not criticize people unless you got my grandkids in the car. You can't do that. But you can do whatever it is you choose to do. God loves you so much, If you want to jump off that bridge, God will take care of you when you land. If I can talk you out of it, fine. But if I can't, you have a God as well. So I look at things from a very simplistic perspective. Live and let live. What does that mean?
How did you gentlemen both choose business as a pathway to the future? Both of you have business. Mike, you're all the way in East Africa.
I ain't like people telling me what to do. I didn't take orders very well. I always had to be in charge. So I said the best thing that you can do is and my sister on my 60th birthday party up at Forest Park, she showed me every card that I had for, even when I worked for someone, sold carpet, clean carpet, own cabs, own transportation. I always wanted to be my own entrepreneur because I knew that was the answer for someone like me that didn't like taking orders. Right. And then finally it clicked in 2012 or 2011. And, consecutively, contiguously for 13 years, I've been able to be self-supporting through my own contributions for working for myself. But it was always my mindset because I know what type of individual I was. Telling you what to do in your business. Who am I to think I can tell you what to do?
And what do you do? What do you do?
What do I do?
Yes.
So as a business, I've got a couple. You mean in terms of my business, right? So I have a workforce development entity that does workforce development for the federal government and the state. I have a call center that I launched with 3 Kenyan partners over in Africa, workforce development, a social enterprise. And I also do consultancy in the hotel and the restaurant space. So people call me usually when they get in trouble. I teach at CCBC and BCCC some high-end restaurant management courses for those that desire to set up and structure their businesses in those regards the appropriate way.
How about you, Mr. McCormick?
So I decided, no, that's not true. My first 2 jobs, the first 2 jobs that I applied for clean, I got the jobs, but I got fired. So when I got clean in May 7th, 2000, right? So not quite as many years as Mr. Haynie, but I'm working on it. So on paper, I look good because I'm former military. I spent a number of years as a computer technician before crack. So I got a job when I first got clean. If you guys remember, Sweetheart Cup out there in those mills, right? And I lied on the application when it said, you remember that question, do you have any felonies? I said, no, right? I got hired because on paper I looked good. And they hired me, man. And I remember, I think it was probably 2 weeks later, they called me to HR and we was at the board, it was a board table. I was at one end of the boardroom table and they was at the other end. It was 3 people, Caucasians, and they had a folder. And I really couldn't fathom at the time what I was there for, but because I got hired, and they said, "Well, Mr. McCormick, we have your," because they had my criminal jacket in the folder. It's Mr. McCormick. Do you remember when you filled out your application? I said, "Yeah." Excuse me, I'm sorry, my nephew. Hey man, I'm on the Zoom. I just want to say hello to you. Yeah. All right. They said, "Well, we've got your we did your background check." I remember this like it was yesterday, man, because they started over their words. I'm trying to figure out why am I here, right? Because I was hired, so I didn't think, So I said, "Well, we pulled your criminal background, Mr. McCormick," and then it dawned on me, right, Mike? I was like, "Oh, yeah, they're ready to let me go," right? So they said, "Well, do you remember the question?" I can't remember. It was like question 8 or 9 on the application, right? They said, "Well, do you remember, Mr. McCormick?" They had my application in front of them too. "Do you remember the question number 9 on the application?" And I paused. They said, "Do you have any do you have any felonies?" They recited the question to me, and then I said, "Oh, okay." They got my jacket right there. So it all became clear of what we were doing here. So then I'm looking at my watch to see how long it's going to take before they said, well, you no longer have a job. And then I'm like, damn, let me finish this. So all the stuff's going in my mind as we sit at the boardroom table because I done figured it out. So they said, well, is anything, well, we have your criminal record here, Mr. McCormick, along with your application. Is there anything you'd like to tell us? So at that point, fellas, I realized it ain't nothing I can say to them that's going to allow them to keep me because they see my criminal record. I said, well, you know, I will tell you that I'm grateful for the opportunity to work here. I was honest then, not previously. I was honest then because I was caught. I said, well, you know, I had an issue. I didn't say substance abuse. I didn't say cocaine. I said I had an issue, and it caused me to do some things that weren't favorable. I didn't say nothing about illegal. I know how to frame stuff, Mike. So I said, you know, and I'm a much better person now. So here we are, and I appreciate the opportunity. And they got into what the policy says. And we understand. Unfortunately, we have to. So, you know, this what we're going to do, Mr. Corman, is we're gonna. They cut my check that day. It wasn't paid.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't paid. It wasn't paid there yet, right? So I went home. I was sultry, and I applied for Domino Sugar. Like maybe the next day or a couple days later, I got hired at Domino Sugar. Again, I lied on the application. I ain't learned. I lied on it because at that point, I had not accepted, right? I had not accepted first that I had committed felonies, right? Secondly, that I was a recovering addict. I'm sorry, first that I was a recovering addict, and secondly, that I had committed felonies in my addiction. I hadn't accepted that, Mike. Even though I was clean, I was probably 2 years clean by this time. Because my first year, I was in and out of jail going back for the warrants that I had over my head. So I was 2 years clean, man, and living, never been clean that long. I'm scared. So I lied on application. So Domino hired me. I start working. Same thing, fellas. I get a call from HR. So when I get the call this time, I look at my watch and say, okay, I'll probably be in there maybe an hour and a half, and they're going to let me go. I already figured it out because it happened 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago. Same thing. We at a table. There's distance between us, and I figured it out. They wrapped my jacket and figured, oh, he must be dangerous. Not only do we have to let him go, we don't even want to sit next to him. So they down there, I'm up here, same thing, folder, 4 people down there. They let me go. So I go home, I'm angry. This is what I did, Mike. This is why I thank God for sponsorship. I called my sponsor, man, because I believe in that. I have a sponsor today with 24 years clean. I said, man, they fired me. So this is what he said. So this is what a good sponsor will do. He will make you own up your shit. He said, well, Vin, tell me something. What part did you play in it? I hate that phrase and that question because it makes you think. If you really sincere about what you're doing, what part did you play in? I said, what I do? He said, I'm sorry. What did the application say? It said, have you convicted? Vin, hold it. Let's do this one thing at a time. Have you been convicted of a felony? Yeah, you know I have, man. Oh, wait, you're going too fast. Why won't you tell the truth? I had to get honest with some things. I don't want to get into that because we ain't got but a few minutes. I said, okay. He said, this is what you do, man. The next application you fill out, tell the truth. Because this what he said, Mike. And when he said this, I wanted to hit him in the mouth. But I wouldn't, of course. He said, you don't think the same God that got you clean will get you a job? I said, bro, I got to go, man. I'll talk to you later. So the next application I filled out was for a job on Urban Avenue at a nut and bolt factory. They still open today. Clendenin Brothers. I never forget it, man. It's my first job clean. They make nuts and bolts and screws owned by, informationally, I'm not racist, owned by 2 white brothers. Old gentlemen, they probably in the 80s, Jimmy and John, I think. So I went there, told the truth. It said, have you ever been convicted of a felony? I put a small check, right? Maybe they overlooked it, right? A small check. And then this is what else he told me. He said, listen, when you say yes, and they asked, because the following question is, if yes, give details. He said, don't give no details. Say, please, we'll answer in interview, because they want to be nosy. I said, okay, he gave me the answer, man. So I said that. And guess what? I got an interview. I sat in front of this guy. His name was Joe Rimsky. Never forget it, man. Joe said, Mr. McCormick, I don't know why you're here. You're overly qualified for what we do here. He said, but I see down here, Mr. McCormick, if you don't mind me, he said, you got a felony? He said it kind of quiet too. He said, you got a felony? So I sat back. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, can you tell me a little bit about it? I said, well, you know what, Mr. Joe, Mr. Remsky, I had an issue with substance abuse at a point in my life, did some damage, had to go and be responsible. But I'm a much better person now, right? And I'd appreciate the opportunity. Same thing I said at Domino and Sweetheart, and they didn't recognize who they had in front of them, right? So this is what he said. My eyes were getting filled up, man. He said, well, Mr. McCormick, I don't know what you're doing here, but he said, so if you don't mind me asking, so he pushed the paper away, fellas. I never forget this, man. This was the turn in my life. It showed me this thing really worked. He said, he pushed the paper. He said, tell me something, Mr. McCormick. He said, what were you out there? What were you doing out there? I couldn't understand why he wanted to know that. I said, well, I was doing cocaine. So this is what he said, man. He said, well, how long? He said, how long, you sober? I said, yes, sir. He said, how long sober? He didn't know how to frame, how long have you been sober, Mr. McCormick? I said, I've got a little over 2 years, Mr. Joe. He said, wow, that's great. I'm looking to see where it's going, right? Do I got a job? Do I not got a job? What are we doing here? He said, man, she sat back in the chair. He said, fellas, let me tell you something, man. He said, I wish you could talk to my brother. He's out there, he's drinking, man, and we don't know what to do with him. So the conversation shifted, right? And I see where he was going. He said, well, what do you do? What do you do? How do you not? What do you do? I said, well, I go to meetings, Mr. Brown. He said, do those really work? I said, well, they work for me. They may work for your brother. If your brother, you say he's doing alcohol. He said, yeah. And then he went into a short history. So we got off of what I was there for onto this man's brother and what his pain was, what Mr. Remsky's pain was. So we talk a little bit about his brother. I said, well, you might want to get some NA meetings, some AA meetings, pull them offline, Joe, and just hand them to your brother. Don't preach to him, just hand them to your brother and see what happens. He said, yeah, I'm going to do that, Mr. McCormick. Thank you so much. He said, well, listen, then he put his glasses back on. He said, as far as I'm concerned, McCormick, you're hired. And then we go into when you can start. So that started my journey working. But I wasn't satisfied, right? So that was in 2002. So I worked for 6 years until 2008. And some things happened progressively for me. I ended up buying a house off a tax sale for $1,500. Fixed the house up, put somebody in it, and sold it for $55,000, right? 2 years later. Took that money, split it, realized that I could do that, and started buying tax sale houses. And by that time, the mortgage industry had crashed in 2008. So you could buy a foreclosure in Baltimore City, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom for $5,000, right? Donnie, you know how I know that and started doing that stuff? You know how? Because I graduated from Powell.
Well, our brother went to Northwestern.
So in 2008, I decided to, that's a little knock I had with Donnie, Mike. So in 2008, I decided to not continue working for a W-2 check, and I started XL Inc. XL X, the letter X, the letter L, Inc. Because you couldn't use the word Excel because Microsoft has a copyright on it, and I wanted something that denoted progression. So we put X and L together, XL. So that grew on, and I got a license as a contractor. Did contracting for a number of years, and then someone who heard me share in Ocean City in 2017 told me, you would be good as a mental health owner. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So as God would have it, 2 years later, I started New Life Recovery Center because I believe real recovery can afford you a new life. So that's what we're here today as a result of that metamorphosis and that organic progression, if you will. Because my mindset, and I'll say this in closing, Donnie, and thank you, Mike, is I like to take things that people have thrown away, things that people have no value, right? And through what God does for me and has put in me, try and get that person changed from the inside out. That's what I was doing with the houses. That's why I like renovating old houses. And I'd use that same template and mindset for people because, if you come down to where we are at the hotel, Mike, we hopefully get a chance to come down. Donnie's been there. We've got some people who are success stories. Matter of fact, they're in the videos, Donnie. I've got some people who are with me right now who are working for me, who came through my program, who had a skill set that we could use, and they're working. So, we do the best we can at turning people's lives around, and we've been very, very gracious and successful in doing that, I think. But that's not up to me. It's up to Donnie and up to you, Mike, to be able to see that and determine it for yourself based on what you see.
If you need treatment on demand, call 240-253-3663. Mike Haynie, Mr. McCormick, we will see you at the soiree December 5th.
You coming, Mike?
Yeah, I thought I was coming on the 12th at the airport, but wherever
That's what you
Donnie
need to come to. You need to come to that, Mike.
Both of them.
What hotel are you at? The one on Gay Street? Are you at the one on Gay Street?
No, the city owns that, Mike. My hotel is on St. Paul Street.
You got the old Radio 1, Mike. You got the whole block.
Yeah, I'll be there to see you, man. I would love to come see you. I think we have a network similar. I know we do. We're doing the same thing. So I'll be there to see you in the next couple of weeks for certain. I got your information. I got all the information I need on you, man.
Okay. Well, look forward to seeing you, man.
I'll be there. I'll let you know. I'll contact you first before I get there.
Let me know.
If I think better, I do better. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Dottie. Thank you.
Yes, sir.